Welcome to the Everclear of music criticism, the next pure stage of fucking your shit up. This is the League of Extraordinary Content Creators, as I've dubbed it. This is a meeting of all the best, my favorite people to read and just get their takes, put it all in one place to talk about an album that's important enough to do it. Yeah, I'm Dan from Free Music Empire, and my son just waxed his friend's brother at basketball today for 2.5 hours. So I feel great about it. Yep, stay street balling out there, kids. I would say, and we have a bunch of great people here. We'll kick off and just introduce. I've been a Pusha T person for as long as there's been that option, right? So I'm very old. Grinding took over the world when I was probably either I was in the army or back from the army, right? It was that 2000 to 2002-ish kind of era. And there was nothing like, people in all black, just, it was amazing. And so I followed that through Re-Up Gang, through, I'm enough of a Pusha T person to tell you that I've always liked Malice better, and I still like Malice better.
Oh,
That makes me an old person, I think. But that's me. I go further back with Push than I do with Kanye, to be honest. So that's my loyalty is always going to be with him on that scene. So the album we're going to talk about is It's Almost Dry, the new release. So it's great, and we have SonRaw, who is dubstep enthusiast,
breaking that out early.
the Flintstones truther. So tell us about what you do and your relationship with the Push.
My name is SonRaw. That's my artist name. I write for Passion of the Weiss and Complex, and I've done Fader. I used to do Fact Magazine in the UK. I've done a bunch of stuff. I DJ'd for a while. Nowadays, I'm making beats. I've got an album dropping very soon with an artist named Five Steez out of Jamaica. We're like in the mixing, mastering, finishing it up stage right now. And yeah, my relationship, it's weird. My relationship to Pusha T is if I ever met the guy. But I bought Lord Willin, the First Clips album, and Styles P, Gangster and a Gentleman, the same week. I don't remember, like they must have dropped like right next to each other because I remember bumping them together. And yeah, I mean, I was 18 years old, like getting into promoting parties, getting into, mixing and stuff. So it was obviously like Grinding was a huge hit. It was undeniable, but they had all kinds of stuff on that album. Like even like one of the softer joints, like Ma, I Don't Love Her is one of my all-time favorite Clips joints because it shows them having fun, and it shows them in a different light than I guess we know now, where it's like, coke all the time. But it was like they were just a rap group, and they had a lot of coke songs, but I guess I didn't see them like that until Lord Willin, which was I was a little older. I was like improper in university right then, and like, yeah, it's just good memories with those albums because I was I wasn't a huge fan of, I guess, that mid 2000s hip hop sound, but the Clips was always like a group that really held it down with those like front to back albums with the Neptunes and all that. And yeah, I guess as far as the solo stuff goes, I wouldn't say that I'm as much of a fan, but we'll get into what we're talking about the album later when we go through all the intros. And I guess now, since we're going to round robin it, I'll pass it off to Dylan, who never met you, but I've read like a lot of the Pitchfork reviews and I really like your stuff. So I'm going to use that opportunity to pass it on to you.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that. It's still very crazy to hear people say that. Also, yeah, great to meet you as well. I've been a fan of your work for a while as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, like I just, yeah, it's just great to be here with all these sorts of beautiful, crazy, talented people. Like, but yeah, as Roger said, my name is Dylan. I go by Cinemasi. I'm a contributing editor over at Pitchfork. That's kind of my main gig, but I write for a bunch of places. I'm over at Audio Mac. I'm over at OK Player on occasion. I used to write on Facebook notes. Anybody here remember Facebook notes? That used to be my fucking. I was like that was just like my depository. I would just throw all sorts of bullshit. I also host the Real Notes podcast. It's about rap and film. I bring on rappers and producers and people, and we just talk about movies and all that sort of fun shit. And my relationship with Pusha T. So the first time I want to say the first time I heard Pusha T was or the first time I heard the clips was when Lord Willing came out. I saw the Mr. Me Too video and it changed my life. That was it. You know, like I was in middle school and I was just like, yeah, no, this is the hardest shit I've ever seen in my life. Because up until that point, the hardest shit I ever knew was like Bow Wow, you know? So like I went from Bow Wow to the Clips and I was like, all right, this is it. Like what, you know, just what an upgrade, especially since, you know, like Lord Willing is so much more focused on the drug stuff. That was a great point, by the way, about Hell Hath, I meant Hell Hath No Fury was the first shit that I listened to.
Right.
But Lord Willing was but yeah, Lord Willing is like a lot more varied subject matter wise, which I think is interesting. And I've been looking for it forever, but somewhere I have my vinyl. I have like a whole crate of vinyl right next to me, and I found the Mr. Me Too single at a place in Princeton when I went to go visit a homie in South Jersey, and like I have the single somewhere and I can't find it. I'm not going to spend 45 minutes digging for it, but you know, I like solo Push. Some of the songs on My Name Is My Name are some of my favorites he's ever made. You know, like Nostalgia is amazing. Suicide with Ab Liva is crazy. I think I agree with Dan that I think I like Malice a little more than I like Push, especially considering that last verse on It's Almost Dry, which is that was a gnarly fucking verse. But nah, bro, this shit is tight. You know, Push is tight. He's good when he's good. I think Daytona's really solid. And yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna pass it on to Rohan. So, bro, do your thing.
Go.
Let's go. Also, did I pronounce your name wrong? Because if so, I'm
It's
really sorry.
so actually that's funny that you say that, because on the last song on this album he says
X Factor.
something
Rohan.
X Factor. That's the Rohan enemy. I just still don't know
Okay.
what that means, but it's not how you say my name. It's Rohan, but I wish it was Rohan now. But
That's
yeah,
a
my
bummer,
name's
'cause
Rohan.
You paid for that placement and he misspelled your name.
I didn't pay for anything. He's just paying dues, you know. Like we go way back. But yeah, I'm the host of the Rap Music Plug podcast. I dub it the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. And I'm just really honored to be a part of this conversation, especially with guys that have been putting in tons of work throughout the years, as I've just been in this rap journalism game for about a year and a half, I feel. So yeah, really excited to be here. And my experience with Push is that as a 27-year-old dude right now, I grew up a huge Kanye fan. So unsurprisingly, my introduction was Push and his salmon colored suit at the VMAs. But since then, I went back and I just adored everything from Clips and his solo work. I'd say he's on my favorite rappers list. He's not necessarily near the top, but he's definitely like in that elite group of artists. His Clips work is great. Hell Hath No Fury is a classic to me. And as a solo artist, like I even liked his mixtapes. Like Fear of God, I think there's a lot of good stuff on that mixtape. Speakers Going Hammer, freestyle, shit's crazy. My Name Is My Name and Darkest Before Dawn, I think are both kind of like underrated. Like I didn't even really love them when they came out as much. I was kind of a bit disappointed when they came out even back then, but I've grown to like these and actually love these quite a bit. And then Daytona, I think, is a personal classic. Like that's a, if it's not a classic, whatever, objectively, I don't care. It's for me, it is. And since we're on the topic and you guys are mentioning it, I've always liked Push more than Malice. I love Malice, but I've always liked Push by a good amount, I'd say. And fun facts before I pass this off to Gary is that I actually helped organize a 3-day music festival in my last semester of university, and we brought Push to the show and he performed. And I was technically, I actually did like, I was like VIP, so I'm right there, and like I actually took one of his crew members' phones and like did his social media thing and like took a video in the restricted area. So that's fun. I didn't talk to him though. I was too scared.
That's hard.
But he was dressed so nice, just classically in like a bomber jacket, just looking amazing, so calm and killed it. But yep, Anyways, I'll pass that off to
Beautiful.
Gary. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. My name is Craig Jenkins. I'm the music reviewer at Vulture. I used to be at
Relax, bro.
Pitchfork. No, I'm Gary. I'm Gary Suarez. I've written for a bunch of different places over the years. I've been very fortunate to have that. I currently run my own newsletter called CABBAGES. There's also a corresponding podcast where we talk to rappers about movies. I know a very original idea I've come up with there. Anyway, my relationship to Pusha T probably starts with, it's in 2002. I'm buying bootleg CDRs in Chinatown here in New York, and I got it for cheap. I got it for like $5. It might have been when you could do like the 3 for $20 deals back in those days. Times have changed. I did not buy Styles P's record that same day, although I should have in retrospect. I did love, I mean, look, I Get High is definitely one of my favorite songs, like regardless of genre, period. It just, just connects with me for some reason. And
it's one of my favorite statements about myself.
yeah. So, it just happened. Yeah. And so my history kind of with him, I started listening to him when cocaine recreationally was definitely something that was part of my life, which it isn't anymore. But it was then back in my DJing days and just, my 20s. Now, Daytona is definitely my favorite Pusha T record. I think that the only thing better than Daytona is Story of Adidon, which I think is just probably I feel like it's, in my mind, it sort of battles with Ether as sort of what is the best diss track.
Couldn't agree more.
In human history.
It's up there for sure.
It was a real moment.
It's better, it's lyrically amazing too. It's not just what he said, it's how he said it. Like people don't give him credit for that.
It's like, especially with like some of the criticism that he gets about just focusing on one topic. It's like if you give him reason to, if you want him to destroy you, he will destroy you
Psychologically.
He won't have to like rely on any one thing. If you want to be his enemy, he will destroy you.
Right.
He never recovered from that, like Old Boy in Toronto. He never got his bounce back.
But I mean, really,
because he
even admitted it, like on the Drake and Future song. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, do it. Go. So
like he did it. He admitted that he lost on Life is Good. That's all I had to say.
But that's the thing. But that is the thing, because he really did like come at it in such a way where like that was the fucking that's Prodigy on the Summer Jam stage. Like it was just the brutality of that. And in terms of my attitude, people were asking questions, and this is where like I started to show my age a bit, where people were just like, "Oh, certain things should be off limits in beef," and just like, "Are you kidding? Like this is totally what's appropriate." He did everything but hit him. Like in that point, like that one thing is like, I basically have ruined a multi-million-dollar deal of yours in one go, and I outed you as a deadbeat dad, Mr. fucking certified lover boy. Yeah. That's why do you think why do you think he leans into toxic masculinity now? Like actually he learned the term and decided to use it in his last album. Like he leans into it so much because like he couldn't, even when he's rapping about being a dad, it's just like, well, I'm like a sleazy dad. I'm like a sleazy dad. And not like Future, who's just like, I'm a dad? I got kids.
I got 5, 6, 7, right? Yeah, like 7 kids, right?
Yeah.
He's too busy having anal sex and making girls pee, which is just. But that's our I guess our next episode or something, right?
Shout out to Hendrix.
Future Hendrix,
where we do a future thing. But like the thing is with there was I think Dee Dee is her name on Twitter. She's awesome. She gives some really interesting music takes. And she said, stop asking Drake to get over it. Listen to all the shit that he said in Story of Adidon. He's never going to get over it. And that makes sense. Like, he's good. He's always going to be feeling lots of feelings about that. Like, that's not going to wear off easy.
That's going to fester for sure. Yeah. Like, that's like the sore spot that you build armor around for the rest of your life. Like it's never going to heal. Like,
I guarantee you that when Drake passes away, the New York Times obituary is going to mention this song.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. It's like, I'm sorry, like they're going to talk about all his accomplishments and everything he did, but there's no way in hell this is not going to be on the record forever as like this is his biggest L.
It erased the whole Meek Mill beef that he like inexplicably won.
Oh,
too.
Back to Back was a great track.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Like, oh,
which
I was-
doesn't
I
get
was-
mentioned anymore.
yo,
Crazy.
I was just listening to Rico from Dreams Worth More Than Money. Like I love that song. And like I real quick aside, I remember when fucking Dreams Worth More Than Money came out and like Meek was about to be the next big thing. Like I used to work at the site that produced Crown Watch Loud back in the day. Like I was at that show and like the energy around it was electric. And then Back to Back happened and all of that shit went out the window. Like it was gone. And like I was like, wow, like just you could lose it all. Like Meek's fine now,
Yeah.
but like just to watch the air.
He's not fine. He's not okay.
Yeah, like you know, he's walking, you know, but like it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to detract, but yeah, interesting.
No,
shit.
it's important. I mean, you said Rico, and it made me think of like there's one criticism. There's only one criticism of Pusha T that bothers me. There's only one. Because if you say, look, why does he always rap about cocaine? That's fine. Go to datpiff.com, look up We Got It for Cheap Volume 3, press play on the 20K intro, and follow it through to the 20K song, and you'll never have to ask anybody again. But the one that bothers me is Push really didn't do this. He's really not about that life. Like, dude, Push's manager got sentenced to 32 years in prison on a RICO charge with 82 counts.
Son.
Like federal investigation. The Virginians said he was running a $20 million a year drug ring.
By himself. Like
it's like
yeah.
Drake can't say that. Like that's not what you know what I mean? And the people
Don't say.
calling him not a drug dealer or just reviewing him, they can't say that either. It's totally fair if he wants to spend the rest of his career speaking for the dope boys that he knew. Johnny Cash did it. No one was bothered. Like, I don't know. That's
The thing on this new album that kind of bugs me with that criticism is there's creativity on this album and people don't really recognize what he did. Because you look at all those Clips albums, Pusha and Malice, they have their flow. But on this new one, Pusha, he's really trying to hit different flows.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm rapping about what I'm rapping about. That's his thing. That's his life. That's always what he's going to be. But he clearly recognized that as a musician, he had to do something a little different. Now, whether you like those new flows or not, that's up to you as the listener. You know, everyone's going to have opinions. But I think it's really unfair. And like, you know, my whole thing is I'm always the watchdog. It's like, oh, if this was a rock act, no one would ever give them shit for that. Like that's my whole shtick on Twitter and whatnot. But I feel that like people aren't appreciating his creativity on that side of things because, I guess the one that really went viral was that Variety article. And I don't know who wrote that. I don't want to talk shit about anyone, but maybe it was more of a pop oriented review for a general audience. But, if you listen to rap, you know that this album doesn't sound like another Push album. Like he did his thing on it. And then like at this point, we just have to decide if we like it or not for ourselves.
Right, totally. Like, like on Neck and Wrist, which I'm not really a huge fan of, like that's a Valet flow he's trying out. And like it sounds good on him, I liked it. Like the actual song itself is whatever, but like I was like, okay, look at that. Like, because I'm a big Valet fan. But like,
I was just saying Valley. It's Valet?
I think it's Valet.
God,
Yeah.
I'm so bad with this shit. Jesus Christ. I've been saying Valley.
No.
Yeah.
I had to get corrected too. I get it.
Okay.
Like
okay.
it's oh, and before I forget, because I'm sorry. Dan mentioned We Got It for Cheap. I think We Got It for Cheap Volume 2 is their second best project. Like I think it's like behind.
I think I actually may agree. I think Lord willing maybe, but it's a little unfair to compare the two, but I agree. That's always been my favorite tape from them.
Yeah. We Got It for Cheap Volume 2 is fucking incredible. Like that's
the
like
Daytona, the Daytona 500 track. I think that's the one. Yeah. That one shit's
the
crazy.
one they did over the Lil Kim beat too. The one they closed it off with, like that was ridiculous.
Nutso. Like
there's an alternative universe where the Re-Up Gang became the Re-Up Gang and like took over and became huge and and he didn't have to kind of, I don't know, become Kanye's fill-in and all that. You know,
I heard recently that Ab Lifa made like a bunch of money ghostwriting, and I did not know that until
Good for him.
This round of Pusha promo, but like that came out.
Yep.
Oh yeah, good for him. That's beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Ab Liva never really got his. He never got his due ever.
No.
Like, yeah, even on Suicide, and like I feel like that was one of the like when My Name Is My Name came out, like that was. I feel like that was a sleeper for a lot of people, and people were like, "Oh, just like don't sleep on the don't sleep on the Ab verse," and it's great, you know. Like I went back and revisited that recently. Like he's really something, and to know he's ghostwriting, it's beautiful. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
Wow.
I seem to remember that he went to prison early on in the success, came out, released a fire mixtape, and then went right back to prison. And there was like a whole thing. No. It's difficult, you know. Rappers get hunted.
That'll do it.
But yeah, so it's been an experience, and I think there was somebody who was talking about it. Maybe it was on the Call Out Culture, but they were saying, would it have been better if they had just surprise dropped it? Oh, Steel Tip Dove, actually. Steel Tip Dove was saying, would this have been better if they had just surprise dropped it?
Like this album? It's almost dry?
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah. But I don't think it's a major thing, but definitely Diet Coke already sounds quite random. Just sounds very unlike the rest of the album. And just the fact that we got it as a single, which I did like the single, just felt even more like it took me 5-6 listens to kind of forget that was like just so out of the scope of the rest of the album. So yeah, I'd say so. Would have been helpful.
I did not like Diet Coke when I heard it as a single. I was like, okay, this is whatever. Like it sounded like a single to me, but I like it a lot more now. I really, really, really appreciate it now. But when I first heard it, I was like, this is fine, you know. But I like it better now. I was tripping. It's good. It's good.
I'll agree with that. I didn't like that or Neck and Wrist. So the first two that kind of leaked didn't have me too excited. I'm not a fan of current Jay-Z, and I say that as someone who was a mega fan during like the Jay's epic 96 to like whatever you want to end it at run. But
2001.
Oh, that's cutting it early, but I like it. But the album, when I started hearing the tracks on the whole album, they kind of grew on me. Definitely Diet Coke did. Neck and Wrist, maybe when Jay's not rapping, I grew onto it. But there's a lot better tracks on that album.
Yeah, no, Gary. How do you feel about the experience of the rollout? Did you get what you wanted out of it? Did it pay off what it was telling you it was going to be?
I mean, yeah, I got an advanced copy to listen to, so that was great. To actually just be able to hear what this thing was like about a week before, and like what I can say is that like it was a good first impression, and he'd been like rolling this thing out for a minute. Like we've been hearing that this was coming. Obviously, Diet Coke, being the first one. But ultimately, it was just like it came out. Everyone got excited about it, and everyone was talking about it, which is what you want. In terms of if you care about an artist like this, you want to see that discussion, and then that's it. Like I've basically listened to it in the lead up to the release and have listened to it about once or twice since then, and I kind of just left it alone. So like they psyched me up and got me excited for it, and there's some particular songs that I was keen to revisit, but this was discarded for me a lot more quickly than My Name Is My Name and Daytona, for sure. So I'm not saying they didn't stick the landing, and obviously they have the #1 album in America this week, in the Billboard 200, although with 55,000 units. I mean, that's not exactly like that ain't Drake numbers. This is the Drake would say. But it's still a win is a win, and that's great. But like I definitely found myself, and not just just because I have to listen to a lot of stuff and because of what I do for the newsletter, but like it was just like I said like, oh, I can get back to this at some other point. I needed it in that moment. I needed to hear it a few times. I needed to walk around the city and hear it in my headphones. But like, yeah, I sort of abandoned it not long after it dropped.
Yeah, I mean, I was my first impression was Gabe Nandez might have 3 better projects than this. Like Diplomacy, 7. Yeah, he might have 2 or 3 better projects than this album, which you'd want more from that for Push. Nothing, Gabe's awesome, but yeah, the underground is fierce right now in terms of the quality of the music.
Well, that's kind of the interesting thing is like I always like kind of grade it on a curve where it's like if I'm comparing this Push album to the last Nas album or the last J album or the last, like we were talking about legacy artists, I think he acquits himself very nicely. I mean, the fact that he's got a -- 1, from that point of view, he's doing great. If I compare him to not even like talking like the underground where we're talking about like, the backwoods level stuff, but just Griselda or the people with Alchemist, then I'm, just the honest truth is like those guys are really running it right now. So it really depends if it's a glass half full, glass half empty thing to me.
Yeah, I was actually kind of interested that like there were no. I'm surprised. Like I know Benny and Push have a song together, but I'm kind of surprised at like the lack of Griselda and Pusha T work. Like I'm surprised him and Conway don't have a track together. I'm surprised him and Gunn don't have a track together. Like it's really weird. You would think that like everyone and their mother was trying to hop on that wave. Like, it's been really interesting to watch the Griselda wave happen from like that, like first contact of Fly God and Reject 2 and Tana Talk 3 to here, like people didn't believe in them. And now they're about to, it's interesting. It's really cool to see them kind of at that level now because they deserve it. But I'm just surprised that like I'm surprised they haven't done more work together. Like I could totally hear trying to think of a song on here. I could totally hear Benny on like even like Let the Smoker Shine the Coops. Honestly, I feel like Benny would be great on that song. And that's my favorite song on this project if I had to pick one. So
yeah,
like,
that one's really raw.
Same.
I feel like Dylan, I was about to respond to you and say like I think that hasn't happened because Push, like he kind of finds himself in like an intersection, right? Between like commercial-ish, more glitzy, glamorous life and the street edge. But then one of the artists I was thinking is kind of like Push, except I don't think can ever be as street as Push in the sense of like making a Daytona is like Rick Ross. But then I remembered Rick Ross has collabed with Benny. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe you have a point there because I was going to say that's my counter. But I think that whole thing with Push being in a middle ground is kind of maybe what this album suffers from, because I do think My Name's My Name, Darkest Before Dawn, I like those better than this.
Same.
I just think there was not only, I think especially Darkest Before Dawn, I think there was really no filler on that. There was a lot more like wow moments. My Name Is My Name, same thing. Like it had that really garbage track with Kevin Cossum. I fucking hate that one. What is that one? No Regrets. Just cannot stand that song at all. But then this album has Scrape It Off and Rock and Roll, which I also didn't like at all. So, but I think the real reason is like he just executed the middle ground better in those albums. I don't think it was necessarily a bad idea to make an album like this. I just think it's kind of hard to. It's kind of hard to always strike this right balance because Daytona, he didn't strike a balance. He just went in. And that's what I loved about Daytona is because it was just visceral, raw power in like every second, like lyrically, beats wise. But with this, I think he went the middle ground, which is fine. But I just didn't think I was left very impressed. I think the beats were not the best from Pharrell or Ye. And I think Push tried some new things, which I do commend him for, but also has written better verses before. But the beats so that's where I'm at.
The beats are definitely the issue on this one for me. It's just like,
we
are not dealing with Kanye West at the peak of his powers in any sense of the word. And we are not dealing with Pharrell as somebody who you're actively seeking. Yeah, maybe he gets a song on somebody's record where he produces it and that feels a little fun in the flow of it. But like Pharrell is no longer like the type of hit maker he was, where it's just like he made earworms that you stuck in your head forever. Again, it's always funny because I'm just like, where, where's Chad Hugo? Like, where are you?
Mm.
Like, because maybe they can figure something out again. But the point for me really is just that, like, you asked, like, why is he not collaborating with people like Benny or Conway or West? And it's pretty clear to me that, like, he has his tastes in people he likes to work with, and he sort of sticks to those lanes. He doesn't do a lot of features these days to begin with. I mean, it's the kind of thing where, like, if Jay-Z asked him to do one, he would, but otherwise he's just going to keep asking Jay-Z to jump on a track here and there. But I don't necessarily feel like Pusha shines over, in theory, like a Derringer or really any of those producers as Camouflage Monk. I don't think any of those really suit him the same way that this stuff does. He has a certain manic energy to him, which again, like, is why, like, even lines like about cocaine Dr. Seuss, it's like it's delivered in that way that actually aids this sort of lackluster 2022 Pharrell production style. It's because he's just like, oh, I know how to make your song sound amazing because I have been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
With your songs.
I love that beat though, man. I really, really do.
It to me is like, I feel like after Brambleton, like it's actually really annoying. It's a jarring jump between those two. Like Brambleton is just like, Brambleton is just kind of like stepping into the water and then only realizing about halfway through that you're actually drowning. It's like, if the production is that just like, it just gets in there, that piano, which felt very Daytona-esque to me. I loved that sort of, that they're pulling from that same space. Obviously the subject matter is hugely fascinating. Obviously he talked about his manager going on Vlad TV and, and basically trying to discredit him and talk a lot of shit and, whatever. I don't know any of these people. I don't know their lives. I don't know where truth lies in these things. I don't particularly care too much. I'm certainly not going to watch a fucking Vlad TV interview, but I found the actual transition between those was hugely jarring. I think I would probably, if I go back to it, enjoy that song more just on its own. Or if I decided in a really nerdy way, which I might do, resequence the album to my liking.
I was about to ask if you think it would be better if it started with Let the Smokers and went into Brambleton.
Yeah, Brambleton would have felt like I loved it as a first track because of how much that was. I mean, it's one of my favorites on the album and I connected with it like right away. But I think if it started with sort of this like Pharrell intensity, of Let the Smokers, I think if that happened, then I probably would just be like, all right, it's a party. I would just suddenly like the tone is set and I'm ready to get in there. But here I am hearing this like brooding, like sort of like not even revenge. Like the track is wonderful in the sense that it's just like, it says a lot, but doesn't say a lot.
Yeah, that feels like a deep cut, like a 9, 10, 11 kind of confessional. You've made it this far. Here's let me tell you thing.
Yeah. I'm also like that track in particular, like I feel like I listen to that, I'm like, oh, there are lines in here that we're never going to understand. Even if we have like one level of the understanding on a particular line, because he will layer his references in clever ways. I feel like there's parts of that song that will never, ever be clear to me what they're actually saying, because I think there are some very direct personal lines in there that are not meant for us to comprehend.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like the type of shit that like somebody will reveal in an interview in like 8 years, it'd be like, oh, that's what that means. But yeah, definitely.
I read or saw in interviews with Push that he was saying he was pushing Pharrell to give him something that was a little more had more of a street edge. I think he was saying that he did that. And I think that's kind of where I felt like the topic I had brought up to the group was just about like this, because Pusha T also said it, like he ran like a pseudo versus with the Pharrell and Ye. I think Ye won it, although I agree. I don't think either of this is their A work, but I think Ye won that versus because I feel like Brambleton's kind of an exception. Neck and Wrist, I actually really love that beat, but I think he tried to be too skeletal. He tried to just like really like go bare bones. And from what I've read with Neptunes historically, I always heard that Chad Hugo was the guy who brought like the darkness to that. And I don't feel like Pharrell is the best. He's not at his peak when he's trying to make beats like, Scrape It Off just was boring, but the track, what is it? Open Air. That's a perfect example of a beat where it's just like, this is fine. Like this could have been made by literally anybody. It's just so simple, and there's nothing unique. There's no like flair. And yeah, I'm just like, is this after 4 years? This is the best 6 beats we got from Pharrell and Ye.
I'm gonna disagree completely. Like I
Really?
can't like I did not
Interesting.
like the Ye beats. It's not that I didn't like them. It's that like, okay, you've got the Donny Hathaway, John Lennon sample. That one was a little obvious. Then you have the same sample as DJ Shadow. And I know that record's 20 years ago, but I'm never going to be able to disassociate it. And like, you know, you got like 5 people like lifting Kanye, like trying to get him past the finish line. Like they weren't hitting me. And that's the kind of beat where I'm like, oh, I'd rather hear some Griselda shit. Whereas with the Pusha stuff, not the Pusha, sorry, the Pharrell stuff, I actually really like that steely minimalism in a lot of them. And like as a production nerd, going back to what Dylan said about like let the smokers shine the coupes, what he did with those stabs, and I know that Pharrell knows this because like, you know, I just respect the guy and I know that he knows his history. That's like some Detroit techno underground resistance stabs. And that's like some deep cut, like black music before it went to Europe and before it like became the dominator, all that stuff. And to do that on a rap beat, like as a producer, it's like, I could have done that. I've got the sample packs. I didn't think to do it. And they did this banger with it. And I was like, I feel so stupid. I should have done that. It's like, there was nothing that stopped anyone else from doing that idea. But it took until 2022 for a rap producer to make that into like, I don't know if it's going to be a hit, but it's a big song on the album.
I agree. That's my favorite beat of it. So like, I think that's the exception to what I'm saying, because that one is fucking. That's my favorite.
I'm on SonRaw's team in the sense that at first I thought it was Kanye, but the more I listened to it, you're right. Ro, you're right that like these are tones, right? Pharrell is speaking in tones on this album, but they're like alien tones, right? They're just off. They're just interesting. And the more you listen to them, the stranger they sound, the more beautiful they sound to me. Like Kanye is, those beats they're frayed a little bit. They're a little bit messy. They just don't feel as good as he used to be. It feels like watching an old boxer, you know, where he still gets every third punch. He's really good, but the rest of the time you're like, oof, I wish you had the money to retire, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Ye won the versus battle barely, but I don't think it's again like either A works. I do think like Hear Me Clearly is an example of like Kanye's beats where it's just like, again, so average. Just like, I didn't like that song when it first came out. I was really excited when it was on the Nigo record because I was like, okay, cool. This isn't going to be on the Pusha T album because I thought it was, but then it was still there, and I'm like, damn, that's a waste. I know I already don't really care for it. It's fine. It's just
is Nigo the DJ Khaled of streetwear?
Basically.
Oh, come on, man.
That's the only, but he didn't. He just kind of curated it, so I guess it is.
That's the thing. Well, here's the thing. It's like, okay, that man is worth an ungodly amount of money, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. So this is basically, he got all these people together, probably paid them nicely or otherwise called in favors for years of all their stuff together, and like basically had them make the album he wanted to listen to. Like that is some pretty
rich man
clear
shit.
That's the proof why we need to eat the rich. We need to eat the rich.
Make their own personal
these people
albums.
are gonna wait. They're gonna give me.
You got to.
Tyler gave him a great track. If I remember,
he did. He gave him 2, honestly.
Oh yeah,
like,
I don't even remember that album.
If there's no Nigo, Wayne never beefs with Pusha. Drake never beefs with Pusha. We never get Story of Added on because they beefed over a Bape sweater.
Okay, then he did,
which I had
a
the
lot
bootleg
to the culture,
version
actually.
of, which I bought on
This
eBay.
is the timeline. We're putting the timeline
one.
together. This is great.
Yeah, man, connecting the dots and shit. Also, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure Nigo did produce some of those songs. I don't think he produced all of them. Did he? Because I could have sworn I went through the list and saw his name in the credits a couple times. Like, but if so, that makes him a little better than Khaled, is all I wanted to say. But you're still not wrong, Gary.
No, you're not wrong.
It's just so funny because like it's somebody who can come in and do that, and like, you know, especially like if we're gonna sit there being all hung up, not us specifically, but listeners and hip hop fans hung up on whether or not Pusha did what he did, like. You bring in somebody like Nigo who is just like just selling you clothes, man. I mean, that's all he's been doing all these years. Like, and he's just like, oh, I know music too. It's just like it almost felt like, you know, a brand. It almost felt like a branded product to me, which has really turned me off to it. And I also don't feel like any of the artists involved really were, you know, given their best stuff. Like it's sort of like, you know, I mean, I'll give you a great example. Like, R.I.P. DJ Khaled.
For real.
So.
Yep.
His tapes would be like I interviewed him, you know, a couple of years back, and like he would talk about sort of like he didn't have to pay people to come on and be on his tapes. These are people he knew. These are people who wanted to do stuff for him. And sometimes someone would spit a subpar verse, but other times like there's more interesting things in there. Like when you work with Kendrick, like there's people who get in there, you go like, oh wow, it's really something. And I feel like the Nigo album. Like just kind of washed right off me. I thought it was just like, okay, this is not it. And then it also maybe now that I'm thinking about it, and again now I'm just going to like the cosmic brain state of highness. But I'm sort of saying like, did the false start of the Nigo record sort of temper my enthusiasm for Push's record?
That may be it. Yeah,
you know, because because like I agree that like the Push record on that album, the Push record on the Nigo track, the Nigo album is just, I don't know if it's not good. It didn't do anything for me when I heard it. I was like, this is whatever.
It's
like
fun.
I'm with
it's
Ro
like
on
Diet
that.
Coke.
Like
it's like Diet Coke. It's like Neck and Wrist. These are all like
I like those tracks though.
I
I ended up liking those. Hear Me Clearly is definitely low tier for me.
Yeah.
I want like if I was to tell them, if I was to suggest a rollout plan, I would have said, look, the first single is Dreaming of the Past, and you're doing like an Otis style video where you're just disgusting, right?
That would
and
work.
then you're gonna do the Smokers in the Coops as the follow-up, right? Like that seems like the plan that I would have pitched.
I could see that. That's I think that's a solid plan. And like one more thing about the Nigo album, I wasn't like huge on it either, but I did really like that ASAP Rocky and Tyler song, and the solo Tyler single's really good. I think the Uzi song, those are the three that I go back to. The rest is whatever. But you know,
I listened to it once while smoking, and it did not make enough an impression where I could say a single thing from there. But it's like, you know, it was like a vanity project. I didn't expect anything from it. It's like, oh, okay, he got his friends, he gave him some clothes, they did him a solid, they gave him some verses. But it's like Gary's saying, it's like he's not K-Slay, he's a guy, you know, in Japan that's doing clothes, and you know.
I mean, he DJs. Like, I'm not like gonna be like, oh, he has no connection to hip hop or some shit. Like, he DJs and shit. But like this, let's just kind of be real about what the situation is. Like, this is about sort of, you know, it felt like a very corporate branded product to me. And because a lot of the features from artists who, you know, do incredible work on their own projects and often on other people's projects, I was really quite like surprised by just the level of how mid this whole thing was. You know, I mean, look, I think that's still like, you know, this Pusha project is way better than that. Like, I mean, like, if I'm over here saying if I'm going to say like, maybe it's like his third best solo project, or, you know, whatever, fifth least worst or something like that. I don't know. I'm not going to do the math, but, you know, but I think it's like, it's still a tremendously well done product. And I feel like a lot of, certainly on my complaints about it, feel more like quibbles rather than like deep, you know, concerns or frustrations with it. Like, Let the Smokers is not my favorite track on it, but like, I have a funny feeling that if I'm in a certain type of car and I hear that song, it's going to mean something a little differently to me than kind of walking through the park on a sunny day.
It's gonna melt your face off, like hearing those drums. Like I was just listening to the shit in the car because I went to the grocery store before we hopped on. Like, Let the Smokers in the car is something else, man. Oof. those drums just hit like, just so like really just perfect driving music. Love it.
I think that kind of plays into, because I was playing it today just to like refresh my memory. I don't think I played it this week, and I played that and I played Future, and I was like, this is really going to be a good year for outside rap music, because like for the past 2 years,
Oh yeah.
Yo,
and I mean everyone
Been
in
saying
this
it. They've been waiting. They've been smartly
everyone
waiting.
in this
Talk about
chat,
it.
like, you know, loves, like, I love Aethiopes. Everyone like loves that lane of underground rap.
yeah.
But there's also going to be room for these tracks where it's like, yo, I want to hear an 808. I want to hear people go nuts. It doesn't have to be the deepest shit. And I think it's probably going to work for him in that respect. I mean, he already got his #1 album, so I'm sure he thinks he's winning in his mind. But I think it's going to work on that level where he's going to tour, whatever. I mean, I don't think, I mean, as a DJ, there's nothing in it that made me really want to drop it in the clubs other than maybe Smoker Shine the Coops, but it's going to get played. Like, yeah, it's, you know, to go to the DJ Khaled thing that he stupidly said about Tyler, he's like, it's going to be music that's get played in barbershops, it's going to get played in cars. And there is room for that, even though Khaled took that out.
Right, absolutely. And what's it called? Yeah, I tweeted, I think it might have been earlier today about like I've been outside a handful of times this weekend. Every time I stepped outside, I hear the Future album somewhere. Like every single time. Like I went to walk around the park and somebody had a big ass JBL speaker at the basketball court and they were blasting the Future album. Like there's like houses all around, there's an ice cream truck and kids, and it's just Future just everywhere. And like I went to the gas station, somebody was blasting it at the gas station. Like, and
Nature is healing.
for real. And like, and you're like, I was the person who had the windows down, like on the way back on the highway, whipping it with smokers playing on the highway. Like we're at that point. Nature is healing, and I'm ready. You know,
It's gonna be a hard summer for Sierra dealing with all of that.
Oh man, she's doing fine. Son. She's
out there in Denver with Russ, man. Good for
they're
them.
cooling, bro.
Yeah.
But
They're
so
cooling, bro.
I have developed what is probably the strangest take on why this is a valuable album. It's almost dry. So, this will involve Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. So we're going there. But if somebody said to me, like, Dan, beyond the #1 album, beyond the Kanye drama and, you know, Kid Cudi sounding like terrible, why is this important? Why is this different or important from his? I would say the thing is, yes, he's talked about cocaine before, but on this album, this to me is almost evil Magna Carta. Like it's Magna Carta was the first time Jay-Z was like, we were kind of disgusted with how bad he was flossing. He was like, I'm wiping my hands on expensive paintings. We were like, that's too funny, you know? And this is evil Magna Carta, where he's not just talking about cocaine. He's also disgusted with me for my lack of taste and my bad floor plan and me not having his floor plan. And like, there's this, for periods of time on this album, Push kind of feels like a Stella Havisham from Great Expectations. Just this kind of rich, you know, dead inside, charismatic entity that I can't take my eyes off of and fascinated listening to.
He said, my son said, you're not flexing, you're cramping. Like that's cloth talk right there. That's
is cloth talk
right there.
I think shit. There's some credence to your theory. Just for in one of like the press runs for this album, Push was saying that he really wanted to, like, he was watching the Joker a lot, like he wanted to be evil, like that was something he was going for, like an evil energy. That's specifically his, like, the tone he was trying to set. So I definitely see that. One thing I'm curious about is, like, another thing, just these interviews are very instructive to me, I found. He mentioned that, like, he wanted Scrape It Off because on the album, because he thought it's important to remain current in the culture, to have a part in it, aka work with like the young guys like Uzi and Don Toliver. But like, my question is do we agree with that? Not in terms of do we want him to be current in the culture. I'm not trying to talk about that. I'm saying, like, do we think making a song like that is actually necessary? Because from my vantage point, Daytona was his, like, the uncompromising gutter album that he hadn't made as a solo artist up until then. And that was definitely the most impactful solo album in terms of getting him like covered by GQ, elevated his status like incredibly. Like he got huge popularity, mainstream, currency, like all of the stuff that I think he would want. He got that from an album like Daytona. And I know Kanye 7-track album Situation and the Drake beef like completely was like all a perfect storm. But I don't know. I don't know if making a song like Scrape It Off is necessary. I feel like just making a better album that's maybe more what he wants to do in his heart would be more helpful.
Like, as long as it's good, I don't really care. You know, like I mean, like before Uzi pistol whipped the woman, I was a really big fan. But like you know, like as long as the song is good and like obviously like goodness is a subjective thing, right? But like if it works and it feels natural, do it. You know, like I like I like Don Toliver fine. I don't really have any problems with him. Like that was like it's a track that like because there's like a handful of songs on this I would probably get rid of, honestly. Like I would probably get rid of Neck and Wrist. I would get rid of Scrape It Off. I would probably get rid of Hear Me Clearly. Honestly, that doesn't need to be there. And you know, I think like I don't know if I would to answer your question. I don't really think it's like necessary, but if it's there and it works, cool. You know, like like
totally.
And but you know, like I think I you know, like we were talking about before off camera, I feel like Push is in he's in an interesting spot. You know, like there aren't very many 40-year-old rappers who can pull #1 albums who aren't Jay-Z. You know, like not even Nas is pulling #1 albums anymore. You know, like so so he's in an interesting spot where he can kind of do what he wants, and like people are kind of hungry for this kind of music again, and they have been for the last like 5 years since, coincidentally enough, Griselda started coming up. But like, yeah, you know, like it's so I don't know that I think it's necessary, but if it works, it's cool.
I guess I didn't have that expectation that he would do all underground stuff, because in my mind, like I will always think of Pusha as half of the Clips. And we were talking about like whether, I know one of the questions is whether Malice watched him or not, and we can get back to that. But you know, to me, all right, I'll just jump into it now. I didn't want to erase anything, but it's like, to me, you look at Daytona, that's half an album. That's 21 minutes. The other half of that album would have been Malice verses. And to me, they will never be better separate than they will be together. Now, getting back to the commercial side of it, like the commercial joints on this one, like they're cool. They're not great. The issue with me is like, he's done better commercial records in the past. He's done stuff with like R&B singers. And he's also had like, you know, some commercial misses on some of those solo records. Like I'll go back to Numbers on the Board, but I won't go back to any of the R&B joints that he's done on his solo ones, really. Like I just, they kind of fade away, and the you know, the good tracks like kind of remain. They stay in the playlist, they stay in the forefront of your mind.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, somebody mentioned it before, but I think I actually think that Darkest Before Dawn, I think it was Ro who mentioned it. Yeah, like Darkest Before Dawn is my favorite solo Push project. I love that project. You know, like the Metro Boomin intro track is like that shit is incredible. Never heard him do anything like it before or since. He opened
the show we had for him with that one. I was like,
oh my god, like that shit. No, sorry.
I would say every Push fan who's like a real Push fan, Darkest Before Dawn is what they give as their favorite. It's that there's no
over Daytona.
Yeah,
I think it's. Yeah, I that's my second-ish favorite solo. Like it's definitely Daytona first, but even on like My Name Is My Name, Sweet Serenade, that's definitely like a commercial friendly. I liked that way more than Scrape It Off. Hear Me Clearly isn't trying to be that, but I also just don't like it. Neck and Wrist, again, I think it was a decent song. I like the beat a lot, but like More Famous Than Rich, Let Me Love You, I love those songs so much more than the commercial stuff he was trying to do on this album.
Gary, how do you feel about commercial Push versus the potential for underground Push? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's a false dichotomy right there too. Like Pusha T's introduction to, you know, most people's introduction to Pusha T is as a hit maker, you know, in the Clips. So like underground is such a weird thing, and I think we all understand it differently than maybe some folks on Twitter might, because we talk about artists like Billy Woods. We listen to these things that are actually underground. Like as much as Alchemist gave Arm and Hammer like a bit of a push, like they are still like this commercial will never fall into that space. So like Pusha T works with Pharrell of the Neptunes, works with Kanye West. So like what makes it an underground song? It's like when a couple millionaires are making the underground song for the other millionaire. I don't feel like for an album that comes out on an imprint of Def Jam through Universal Music Group, like I just feel like we're using the wrong parameters, because I think we're building it around like what feels a certain way to us, or maybe what topically is a certain way. Like I didn't have any real strong feelings about Scrape It Off either way, but like I also didn't see it as such a divergence from the other stuff on there. Everything other than that one track where Kanye's vocals are conspicuously higher than Pusha's on
Dreaming of the Past.
Yeah, it's really jarring. It's really jarring to listen to. Anyway, the thing for me is like this is all commercial music. All those albums that we've described have charted on the Billboard 200, and like did so, even some of those like My Name Is My Name did so before really the streaming platforms really had a strong enough foothold. Like you're talking about records that came out in earlier in the 2010s. So I feel like underground Pusha is a feeling that we as fans have, which doesn't invalidate it, but it is something where it's like there's this idea that if he's rapping about certain things overtly, then is doing that. But no, I mean, like he has been a commercial rapper for his entire career. It's just he's not trying to sell me a mass product. He's not trying to do shock tactics like a Playboy Cardi to get me to pay attention to his shit. Look, I was a teenager when Marilyn Manson was the thing, so like I fucking get it. We were there, but the reality to me is like Pusha T has not been an underground artist for as long as the vast majority of us knew who he was or heard his voice on a track. So like I think that this is where like we get into this weird sense of like, well, Drake is Drake a rapper or a singer or a pop artist or whatever, and these blurring things that happen with that. I think it's like Pusha T raps about some stuff that maybe we don't hear anymore in our perception of commercial rap. Like, do we hear about selling drugs? Yes, but there's the level of intricacy that he's using, where he's speaking less. He can speak directly, but also indirectly within the same bar. He has these skill sets to do that. So I think we also conflate how technically good he is at this, his proficiency, with him being underground. But the truth is he's been a major label artist his entire career. He's not underground. He is overground.
I think there's also, go ahead.
No, you first.
I think it's also like when people talk about commercial underground, there's also, at least to me, and this might be me getting older and not being connected to what like teenagers are listening to as much, but there is part of the rap game where the commercial side has gotten, for lack of a better term, more commercial, or at least further away from what Pusha T was doing, in the sense that you do have those Cardis, those Uzis, and like to his credit, he got Uzi on the album, but that's really more of a like punk auto-tune kind of side of things. And at that point, yeah, sure, maybe Pusha and maybe even a Future looks more underground in comparison, but that has nothing to do with their sales, with their streaming numbers, with their reach. It's just there's some rap music that's being made right now that is for, lack of a better term, maybe a suburban audience. And that's kind of cool, because like you have Black suburban kids that can really identify to that too, and they should have music as well. But it's like there's different levels to this. Like, I mean, Puffy was hella commercial, but if you played Puffy today, like it wouldn't scan as commercial to a kid today. And Pusha's almost coming out of that world. Because like even, we talk about Lord Willing as the first Clips album. I went back to listen to the unreleased first one a couple of months ago.
Exclusive audio footage.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And it, Push was really coming out of that post Bad Boy kind of Rough Riders, Murder Inc., Def Jammy sound, which like to me that got me into rap music as like, you know, a 14-year-old or whatever. Like I went back and got to the Mobb Deep stuff, but like the stuff that was on TV and on the Rush Hour soundtrack was kind of that big shiny Def Jam sound. And like I'm sure if I played it to a 17-year-old today, they'd be like, get the fuck out of here with your boomer music, and my feelings would be totally hurt.
Yep.
What was I gonna say? I think it's more like I think as opposed to like underground versus mainstream, it's more like we gotta like I think it's interesting to consider the like Push is like a traditionalist when it comes to that, you know, like I think because like you know, like kind of to Gary's point, like underground is kind of like an aesthetic in terms of like this is, you know, like just like what people associate with like underground, quote unquote. But like I think it would be more accurate to say that Push is just like a traditionalist. He really believes in the craft. He really believes in like the intricacy and like putting the bars together in a way that sounds good and like and you know, like one thing about Push is like he's very metered. He's very rigid as a rapper. He's not like a Woods who's going out and just like squiggling through a measure, you know, like Push is he's a soldier, you know, he's just marching. Like especially on a song like Coops, especially on a song like Diet Coke, you know, and like I think that I think it's just like as opposed to underground versus mainstream, it's like a more traditionalist versus non-tradition. And I mean like non-traditional is not a good word to use because obviously there are different traditions throughout all different kinds of rap. But like, you know, like he's very much like a true schooler, like you know, like old school New York fucking like this is how to rap, you know, like that's kind of what he's going for here. And I think you know, like once again to Gary's point, I think people kind of conflate that with like being underground because like all the underground people are rapping like that. No, well, once again, not all people. Yeah, hopefully y'all get what I'm trying to say.
No, I think it's just that the fantasy of what Push would be if he didn't have to like chart or push to chart, right? Is really a sexy image. If we're like, oh, it's the Mad Lib album, and there's a song that features Rock Marciano and Stove God Cooks, and it's going to be the best cocaine you can imagine, right? Like, that's kind of a sexy thing, and you could sell that on vinyl and clean up, you know. But like, that's a possible that a lot of people I think are waiting for a little bit. Yeah.
I just got reminded of this project that came out right around when Lord Willin blew up. It was the Weatherman mixtape from like the Def Juxie guys. And it's like, it's this little project. It's not on streaming. You got to find it. But there was a version on there where it was LP, and I think it would have been Cage or Camus. I'm not totally sure. Over the When's the Last Time You Heard It Like This Beat? And it was such a moment all the way back in 2002 that, oh, wow, like these Def Jux guys are over a Neptune beat. And like, it was such a thing back then that it's kind of crazy that 20 years later, that's still kind of a dynamic that hip hop is in. Cause like people were losing their, like as much as you could in an underground club. Like when LP came on and did his verse over that in his tour back then, people lost their minds because it was not expected that there would have that crossover. So to what you're saying, Dan, like to kind of have the opposite side of it, to have Push over Madlib, like, yeah, it's people are still interested in that kind of crossover because it's not as common almost as you'd think it would be after 20 years.
And I think you're the example of Madlib when we don't need to look farther than Freddie Gibbs, because I think Freddie Gibbs is an example of someone who kind of did that. I remember I loved him. I'm not like day one, but I was pretty early, I guess, compared to most, like 2010, 2009, like those Straight Killa mixtapes, EPs. I was on that early, and I liked that. But he was still he was making like trap kind of music. He was making streetwise content, but it had more of a commercial friendly sound. But then he went with Madlib, and he kind of did that sexy transition that we're all looking for with Push, and I mean that did pay off. So it is, and it worked really well. Obviously, it's one artist, one producer, but that it doesn't mean it'll work with Push. But I mean, that's the blueprint that could happen still. I don't think it wouldn't work, Palm Olive was a fantastic fucking track. Pusha
Yep.
T, that was a stellar,
Yep.
one of his best features. Again, a feature he doesn't do
beautiful.
rare. He rarely does features, and
Killed it.
I think that's interesting as a possibility.
Right. And didn't Push say that he scrapped the Mad Lib project? I'm pretty sure he said that he like
Did he say
it's
he
like not
scrapped it?
happening anymore. Yeah, like because like he listened, he did an interview. He said he listened to the beats and he was like, I like these a lot, but like I can't see myself rapping over them. And like this sounds, he said like it would be better for like a beat tape sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, you know, like obviously Push could do something else at some point. Like I also think that there's a chance that we might get another Clips album. You know, like it only because it's been taken. Like Malice has always been very like, no, I'm not doing this. Like Push has mentioned it a bunch of times. He's been like, hey, people want us to do a fucking Hell Hath No Fury reunion tour, and we, you know, we'll pull in $1 million just even before the merch happens. And Malice has always turned it down, like no. But he's starting to do more stuff and starting to poke his head out a little bit more. And now he's Malice again and not No Malice.
Yeah,
so
important.
you know, like there's a chance that you know, like that. I feel like another Clips album might almost be. I feel like that might do for him what the Mad Lib album might have. You know, I think that would be like imagine a whole new generation of people who it's almost dry and Daytona are like their introductions to Push, and then they hear a new Clips album and it turns out to be crazy. Like that might do something. Like maybe not what Pinata and Madlib did for Gibbs, but it would be a different kind of transition, you know? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
If we don't get a Clips album, Malice has a lot of explaining to do for that verse, because like
son,
he just teased the shit out of us.
We got to get to that question. So did he wash Push on his own album? I think the
so,
consensus
yeah.
is yes. Yeah,
I think
Yes.
so. Yeah.
I like
if,
Push's
if
verse,
you're only
but
going to
the
spit
answer
one
is yes.
verse every 10 years,
But
it better be
No,
a
he
damn
doesn't.
good verse.
I mean, look, he puts out projects. Like I've gone back to some of his like quote unquote Christian projects. It's not like he's fallen off in any way.
No,
Right.
I
He
love
doesn't
those
release.
albums. I love
He
those.
doesn't like he does do what he does. But on this particular song, I mean, my God, like cutting it with Vicks, like that line just like stung me in the back of the fucking throat, like back of my neck. I was like, ooh. So like, yeah, I think that it's pretty clear that like he allowed himself to be like, if I were to dip my toe back into this space, rest assured that I would be an actual threat.
Right. Like just like there's like the stretch from 3 record deals show me ignorance is bliss, trying to milk a game, it's only 2%. X told you hell is hot, I told you repent. Like, come on, bro. Like, are you serious?
That's what I like about this, because I did listen to the No Malice album. I don't know when it dropped, like 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
I don't remember what I thought about it, but I don't think I was too into it. But I like it that because he dropped the no from his name, he's kind of like dipping his waters in this content, but he's still not the same guy that he was 20 years ago. So he still has like, you know, I'm a born again Christian or whatever I think that's what he is, right? But he's like weaving that in a really cool way to where he's like talking about this stuff, but he's still like, I'm like the elder statesman, like guy, like repent, like those kind of things. I don't know if he'd say 20 years ago. And like the aggression mixed with that Christian kind of like religious theme that he still really like actually believes, like righteous aggression that he has. It's really interesting. Like I actually wasn't as excited as others to hear it, because I kind of like the feature, because I thought it would be more of the same from what I heard before. And I was just not as interested. Like his verse on Jesus is King, I don't remember, maybe it is good and I'm kind of mistaken, but I don't think I was too hot on it. But this was dope. Yeah. Like Vietnam flashbacks. I get triggered by a sniff. Oh God, that's crazy. And that's like classic Malice. It's actually saying something too. Like he gives you the emotional, like the PTSD. Like he gives you that Push kind of. That was always their kind of dynamic, and I loved it.
Well, I want to go back to the dynamic. I think because when the question of whether Malice washed him, I would say the Clips dynamic is set up so somebody always washes something, right? Because Malice is always he's always been the thinker, right? That's always been his deal. Like, I come in and I like when you say like, you know, the Jesus stuff is, you know, is hard or whatever, and it's not, you know, he was always that way. If you listen to any of them, his verses are heavy with his conscience. If you look at the Lord Willing cover, Jesus in the back seat, right? Like he's always been this way, but his heaviness is countered by Push's kind of punk attitude.
Evil, like evil, cold, like
Yes,
kind
and
of
so-
robotic almost. Yeah.
Yes, so he'll give
Yeah.
you the conscience and the depth, and then you go to Push, and Push is like, yeah, and I don't care, and it's amazing, and Push gets to watch him, and vice versa. You know, Malice takes center stage when you put.
I
him
like
out.
that. I like that point that they kind of take turns, because if you just look at like Hell Hath No Fury, Keys Open Doors, that's easily like top 3 my favorite Pusha T verse. He washes Malice like 3 times over on that song, but that's because that song, like, it was all about that. It was all like in Push's wheelhouse. But then Nightmares, Malice takes the cake for that, like by a mile too, because that one was the closer. That was like the reflective track. That one was the most sentimental, and Malice like breaks your heart with like what he's saying in his verses. So like, I like that point that the way they're set up, you're kind of naturally gonna favor one or the other.
That kind of, I mean, if you take a look at this last track on It's Almost Right, it fits into this mini subgenre of Clip's closers, because on Lord Willing you have I'm Not You, which is very reflective. Then you have Nightmares on Hell Hath, which is probably my favorite song that any of them have been involved in. It's just like,
Fair.
it brings me back to a very specific time in my life and like some very specific emotions that, you know, now that I'm a grown ass man, I'm like, you're 22, you didn't know what being miserable and reflective even was, but at the time that shit was really deep. And the fact that they were able to come back with Pharrell and deliver something in that lane and not have it feel like, we talked about a legacy artist, that doesn't feel like a legacy artist track. That feels like 2 people that really locked in and made great rap music. And the album is, to me, like, it's spotty. There's not every track that I love, but moments like that make it a really worthwhile album to have in his discography.
So Gary has to leave soon. Question, Gary, would you be interested in a Malice album over Kanye West gospel rap production?
No.
No. No. I'm not interested in a Kanye West gospel album. I haven't been. Although I respect some of the people who are contributors on there, folks like Evax, I think are fantastic and do great work. But it's like, no, I don't want that. It's like, you know, when I think about someone like Malice, you've got, you know, this, we've been talking about sort of like how his faith informs his stuff, you know, historically and to this day. And it's just like, I don't really think that that's the right move for him. I don't really necessarily think that he should be, you know, in that zone. I think that we need to keep Kanye largely away from beats, or at least make sure that he's got the right people around him on it. So the best tracks that he's on in this are co-credited to other people, and that's how he sort of operated these past few years. You know, 88 keys, you know, I mean, I mean, I don't know exactly what each person did, but like, it's clear to me that like Kanye is just sort of producing what he's producing, and like Pusha gets to pick what he wants from it, which is great. But like at the end of the day, it's, I don't want to hear Malice over that. I want to hear Malice over what he wants to be over. I would love for him to have the kind of budget that a Pusha would have, that he could basically go out there and decide who he wants to work with. Maybe it is Pharrell. Again, I would be, after this project, I'd be somewhat less excited about a Pharrell entirely helmed new Malice album, or even a Pharrell entirely helmed Clips Reunion album. I think Malice is somebody who is continues to find his own way. And I don't feel like we do him much of a service by tethering him to, you know, to his brother's legacy. His brother has become the guy who works with Kanye West. I don't, and obviously Malice has had, you know, of late, there's definitely been, there's that touch of it. But I think that ultimately, I want Malice to find his own path. I want him to find his own producers and find people that work for him. You know, have I been like blown away by the music on his last, a couple solo albums? No, not necessarily. I don't hate it, but it's not necessarily the people I wanted to go for. But like, give him a budget like Pusha T had, and give him the leeway to basically be like, okay, I can give you, a 35-minute album if all the tracks are up to snuff. I don't want to keep seeing people go back to just these guys, because we're going to get this classic rock bullshit. We're just going to get this sort of sense where, like, after these guys fizzle out, like, they just keep working with the same fucking people. Like, when was the last time the Rolling Stones put out a good album? The Rolling Stones have continued to put out albums. When was the last time they put out a good record? It's an excellent question. The answer would probably be 1995, if we're being kind about like what Voodoo Lounge. But that's really
I
what
would
I'm
have
saying.
said Some Girls.
I mean, some girls, look, I'm not going to disagree with you in some senses. But all I'm trying to say is that, like, I think Pusha T, if he's going to come back, if he's just teasing us on this and gives us a thing, I want him to come back in his own way, on his own terms. I don't want him to be on Good Music. I don't want him to be working with Kanye West, who is, not necessarily producing the best work of his career these past few years. Regardless of everything else with him, I don't think he's actually producing good enough work that you should be like clamoring to work with him.
Yeah.
That's my main issue. So that's my answer to your question. Is like, Malice deserves better now.
And I'd throw in Tyler the Creator as my choice.
For producer?
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
As the Neptune's lineage, but he has, like, I think he's making the best music of his career. Igor and Call Me When You Get Lost. He's pretty diverse, He can make like some sample-based stuff too that Push and Malice would like too. So that would be my choice.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, Gary. You did great. I appreciate you being here, and I'd love to do this again with you.
Yeah, good putting a face to the newsletter, because I read that every time it hits my inbox. So
hell yeah, man.
Thank you.
Shout out to
Thank you,
CABBAGES.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing work.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That really means a lot, guys. It's just, I'm just trying to do it. Yeah, I've got a scheduled thing where Jeff and I, who we do the podcast together, we we have to watch these movies a couple of times before we actually talk about them. And we have scheduled for 10 o'clock tonight was when we're going to do the second viewing of our next movie, which is awesome.
Hell yeah.
Hey. Yep.
All right. Thank you guys so much. It was great to have
Talk to you soon, Gary.
Take care.
But no, it's a great point with the Tyler point. The ugly part of this, because I honestly, all the points Gary made about Malice, I definitely made when Push aligned with Kanye. I didn't want Push to become one of the people, because Kanye does have a history of eating artists and kind of dismissing them a little bit.
He's not been a great CEO of a label, which is why he eventually relinquished it. Tiana Taylor, perfect example of her fiascos.
Right. Right.
And even Big Sean, like
Big Sean.
Just like
I don't know what you could have done with Big Sean.
Yeah, but
he did enough, but he still kind of throwing him around, didn't use him the best, and he definitely helped him. Like, I'm not gonna say that Big Sean would be nowhere without Kanye, but Big Sean could have got some more out of those records. I think with Pusha T, with the whole Tiana Taylor thing was coming out, because I actually liked KTSE. I thought
me too.
But it was there was so much that I think it could have been legitimately some amazing, one of the best R&B albums of a while, if it would have got the tweaks that I think Tiana was talking about, making it a little longer. But Kanye was in his bag on a lot of that on that fucking album, and she was great. But Push was saying something which I think is relevant to what you're saying, Dan, which is that Push is just not the kind of guy that will allow, and it's not a shot at Tiana, but he's not the type of artist, and he definitely had way more cachet to allow Kanye to just be like, oh yeah, we'll get to it, or I'm Kanye and I'm disorganized and I have $1 billion corporation I'm trying to build on the side. He didn't let that happen. He's like, you kind of just have to make time and go and just make the album and basically get him in a room. And it's hard to do that.
I'm just picturing pitching beats to him. He likes a beat. He goes, ugh. He doesn't like a beat. He goes, ugh. You're just getting different variations on that.
That's funny as hell.
But and he said this on Breakfast Club, right? He was like talking about how, when I came in to work with Kanye, I had my own team that been with me for decades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can be more honest with him than anybody else because I'm an artist of a certain caliber, and I can step to him and say that ain't the move, but this is, and he'll listen in a way he won't with other people. So, and it was clear because Push was just getting better work from Kanye, right? Like the Teyana Taylor album, Kanye's the problem with that album,
Mm-hmm.
and like Daytona, Kanye's not the problem with the album, right? It's great. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true.
I mean, also, just as a musician, making R&B is difficult in a way that making those Daytona beats isn't. Like, I prefer as a listener the Daytona stuff, but to make those R&B records, you got to have more instruments, you have to have more mixing. It becomes exponentially more complicated to do it in 7 days. And she was the last one to drop out of all those. Like, she got the short end of she drew the short straw in that one because it's tough to make that record in that amount of time, and they really shouldn't have put it out when they did. They should have spent a few months to like clean it up, do it right. Like, she deserved better than that.
Yeah, the stripped back minimalist approach with R&B is not done often.
No.
And like the only times it's worked in recent memory that I can, like, on a grand scale is like When I Get Home, but that was perfectly manicured. That was minimal as fuck, way more experimental, but that's a different point. But it's hard to do that. And he was in that classic, like, it works kind of for Daytona, even though that sounded finished to me, but like it being a little unpolished, Comeback Baby sounding like fucking like it was recorded with like an iPhone mic, like that works. Teyana Taylor and like the beats, not so much, even though again, I like it, I think, a lot more than most, but there was like so much meat on the bone. Could have made it so much better.
The stripped down minimal thing, it definitely, like SZA, right? SZA's the one that I think of with that stuff. So,
but you still need care to get it to sound right. Like, there's minimal, we rushed it out, and there's minimal, this is an aesthetic choice.
Yeah.
And those are two different things.
Yeah, and if you're gonna sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like, I got sympathy. I got sympathy for Kanye because he was clearly in his manic phase, and like, out of all the egregious shit that he said and done over the course of his career, that doesn't really rank up. But as a musician, it's one of those things where it's like, man, if you weren't already famous and you handed this in at a major label, they would have just said like, this is not coming out. This is not a finished product.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, because there was a like what I heard was like added verses that were taken off and things like that.
Yeah,
and again, like if you're gonna make these short songs, like if it's not like just engineered to perfection, a 23-minute R&B album, it's just people don't listen to R&B the same way they listen to his hip hop. Like people like often will go to a Teyana Taylor album and listen to one song or two songs, and like Gonna Love Me, Joe Budden podcast made this point. I just remember it. I don't know why I'm citing them, but they said like if you add another verse to that track, that could have been her Cranes in the Sky. And I agree, because that's my favorite song. That's a staple on any playlist I ever make, where I'm trying to make like a girl, like a romance playlist. That's like a beautiful everything. But yeah, it could have been even better. Just add another verse to that. Make it like a fucking statement instead of like just another song,
Romance playlist. I would say
I've made a few of those recently.
Hey.
I would say the 7-song summer was really interesting, and I think I just feel personally the whole market observed it and said, "You're 2 songs away, right? You actually need 9, but you don't know, right?" I feel like the whole market was like, "Oh, okay, they were wrong, but they were close." People don't want a shitload of songs a lot. You've got to create something that has value, but 7 is too short. Like most people are now like 9 to 11-ish,
Well, I would say
good sweet spot.
Yeah.
So
like
it's which Ka's sitting back being like, "Told you."
Hey, yeah, man. He's
Y'all
Ka though,
Y'all making me feel good about having an 8-track album coming out right now. Like that just gave me a confidence boost.
Let's go.
8-track. Let's do. So to one of the questions, Dylan, put this question out. Is he a legacy artist? Is Pusha a legacy artist? I'm gonna say no. I don't think we've seen the best of individual Push. Yes.
Really?
No.
Interesting.
I don't
Okay.
think so. And I creatively, I really genuinely creatively think he has more he can dig into.
I was going to say yes on the basis that Lord Willing dropped in 2002, 20 years ago. If you go from 2002 back to 1982, like the biggest rappers, Melly Mel. So when you look at it that way, it looks really old. But then he got the #1 album in the country. So I guess he's not, because he just proved, legacy artists don't get #1s. Period.
Yeah.
So he kind of like made that null and void by like delivering those numbers. And commercial results aren't everything, but when you're dropping on Def Jam and you've got Kanye and Pharrell, it kind of is a lot of he's not in that Billy Woods lane, he's not even in that Griselda lane. So he did, he saw the mission and he executed it and he got the results he wanted. And I think that gives him like a lease on life as an active artist that maybe Jay and Nas and like people in his age bracket don't have right now.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And like when I posed that question, Ro asked for some clarity, and like it, and like I said, like Push is in an interesting position because of everything you just said, Ro. Like just like he's like there aren't, like I said before, there aren't very many 40-plus-year-old rappers who are dropping #1 albums. Like Ice Cube's not dropping a #1 album anytime soon. Fucking like if Jay were to come back and drop an album, he's gonna go #1 because he's fucking Jay-Z.
Yeah.
But like like he's just like, there aren't very many people, and like it's crazy to think that Push is 40 plus. Because it really doesn't feel like it. He's, like to Dan's point, he does still feel hungry, but it's just like he has 20 years of like not just like a hit song, but like he's got solo tracks, he's got clips tracks. Like when he did the Darkest Before Dawn tour, like he did all the new stuff, he did Numbers on the Board, he did all that stuff, and then a bunch of clip stuff, like that was basically like the legacy tour happening. So it's almost like by getting that #1 album on top of having this crazy backlog, like he's kind of like having his cake while shaking his fist at the youngins. But like he's not exactly shaking his fist on he's not doing the get off my lawn thing, which is really cool. But like he's just in a really interesting position where like he's technically a legacy artist, but he's not dated. He's very I don't know if I'd call him cutting edge, but he's very much like he's tapped in, like he's definitely tapped in a way that like Jay isn't. He's tapped in a way that Nas isn't. He's tapped in a way that Puff isn't,
And I think he's got more fans that are young as well, because like
definitely
I feel he's had, and that's Kanye also, and the whole streetwear connection and all that. But he did a show here, like, it would have been 4 years ago. It would have been when Daytona dropped, and it was like a big mural graffiti kind of festival tour. And he did, and I went, I had guest list, I just showed up, and he fucking killed it. And everyone down there was like kids, and they were getting their mind blown because for him, they were a new artist when Daytona came out. And I feel that a lot of that carried over to this album, where those fans he made on that one are what got this one to #1.
Yeah, that's beautiful,
Yeah. And I was gonna say, I think you can look at Push as having two separate careers, right? Like that that there's a whole wave of fans that discovered Push on My Name Is My Name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, oh, I like this person, right? And Push himself said, this is weird for me because I've never had to do full songs, right? I was doing song parts, and now I'm doing full projects, just me. So this Push is a young artist.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
In a way, Nas is not, right? Nas is like the oldest.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like my answer to that question is that I kind of similar to Dylan's, that he's technically is, but he's not. And I think that's mainly to do with his odd career trajectory, the Kanye kind of jetpack that kind of adds relevance that is not, it's just, it's only Kanye really, just like he attaches his name, young kids go crazy. But I think it's mainly about like, is he pushing the envelope? Does he sound dated? And that's where I say no. But the only thing I feel like he's getting close is because just like looking at how he makes music. So Daytona was not experimental, but it was definitely, I would say that's an example of being bold, like just being bold. That was a very odd album for a commercial artist to make of his stature.
Definitely.
But
Facts.
then It's Almost Dry. I think it's a pretty fitting title because in multiple ways. One way, I think this is a little mean because I actually like the album generally, but it is kind of almost dry in parts. Like I actually feel like this is kind of dry, not in a good way. But also I think it's more like this is almost the end of his career. Like the coke is almost done. Like his career is almost over. He probably has one more album realistically that'll get the eyes this did, because he'll be 48 years old. Like, because if he's dropping every 4 years, 47, 48, I just think that's expecting a lot for someone to not be a legacy artist at 48 years old. So, and he doesn't do many features other than that. So I'm not saying he's firmly a legacy artist, but I think he just about will be by default, unless this album defies like any expectation I have. And he's like, he would have to push the envelope a lot more than he did on this album for me to think otherwise.
Right.
Every 4 years, that's like 108 Flea Lord albums.
Honestly, yeah.
And I like Flea Lord. That's not a diss. I love Flea Lord. He's a character.
And then on top of that, it's 245 Currency albums. You know, like, that's like dog years. And it's just like he's you know, I'm just in a position where I want to see more older rappers get the chance to just kind of like do what like a Johnny Cash did, you know, because like Cash was putting out hit records until he died, you know, like so I want and you know, like there was never anybody, you know, like there was never anybody who was like, oh well, Johnny Cash is like, I don't really know if there were any, like I'm not tapped into that shit like that, but like I don't think there were like, oh, Johnny Cash is washed conversations happening. Like people would
there were in the 80s. He did some corny ass like before he came back and did the Rick Rubin shit. Like I remember it was like a YouTube deep dive. I was looking for samples, but they had like this commercial where it was like a K-Tel Johnny Cash compilation, and it was the most rinky dink cowboy, like trying to sell it to like your uncle from Oklahoma type stuff. And it was like showing it, like, I mean, and you know, Johnny Cash, great artist. He's done some like real impactful, emotional stuff. They were taking all of his corniest material and being like, hey, you like country? Like, you'll like this.
Oh, that's rough. That's rough.
I think to your point, Dylan, I think that, and what Roe had a great rollout on that, but I would say the difference is that the audiences are different, right? Hip hop back in the day, the audience has moved on from you really quickly.
Like you hit 30 and it's over, you know,
yes.
like
yes. But like this, we have an audience of old hip hop heads who are very loyal, right? And like are very, you know, are rocking out and buying stuff. And there's people like me who, as long as Push is dope, I'll be there.
Same.
You know what I mean? My money spends like anybody else's money.
I almost think that back in the day, like that turnover between artists was also the labels that would just shelve you after 3 albums. They're like, okay, we got what we want out of you. We're moving to the next rap group. Whereas now artists have a little bit more agency to shape their career trajectories. And like fans are fucking with it because, you know, like there's no reason why we wouldn't. If the album's good, we're still going to listen. Whereas like back in the day, you're like, oh, all right, well, you were like on the Das Effects tip, but now we're at DMX, so fuck you, basically.
Yeah. Think about how like Wu-Tang became underground, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they just invested themselves in it, and now it's like Czarface or whatever, and it's laying there, and like, so this can definitely continue in different forms. I think Push has options,
right? And you know, like to your point, like you mentioned Czarface, like they did songs to the Venom movie, which is like crazy to think about. Like I saw
Wow.
that new Venom movie and I heard a Czarface song and I was like, what? Like it made sense because of course like they've got the comic book thing, like it made perfect sense. But like just to see them get that opportunity and like and like I have a lot of feelings about Run the Jewels, but like you look at Run the Jewels and you're like Mike and L's fucking second act and like how big, like they're about to play 5 dates at Madison Square Garden in August with Rage Against the Machine. 5 dates back to back to back to back to back. Like that's
I'm gonna see them one of those dates in Ottawa for sure.
Oh man, I feel, like I just turned 30. So like I feel like such a young old head like heading into because like I love Rage Against the Machine. I like Run the Jewels a lot. And like it's just gonna be such a strange feeling to just be like, I like this stuff, but I feel like I'm like a little too young to like this stuff. It's really interesting. I like it. It's good.
That's not, I used to be in conversations at my synagogue with really old women just being like, Sarah Vaughan had the voice of an angel, and I was like 28, like music is music. Yeah,
I gotta dig for samples all the time, and like I've just been using like random streaming apps, like find me a random song on streaming to dig, just because like vinyl is expensive as fuck right now. I am really into 70s Taiwanese singers right now. Like I got the hottest playlist at the dim sum spot.
That's
just
hard,
from looking
honestly.
for samples.
But
going back to what you were saying about Rage, like I saw them in 2007 at Randall's Island. They did the Bells tour there. I went to see Wu-Tang. I went to see every act except Rage, but I was a Rage fan. I was just like, cool, they're headlining. That's a bonus for me from seeing all these rap acts I want to check off. And that show was crazy. I hope the Madison Square Garden shows have like better shade, just because like being in the sun all day was weird. But that was the weirdest rap show I've ever been to my life, because half the crowd was there for like Rakim and Cypress and PE, and the other half of the crowd looked like they were all these, I don't know, like I'm not American, so I can't totally recognize where they were from, but I'm gonna go ahead and say like roided up Bostonian white guys that were just there for Rage and that were drinking beer the entire show, ignoring all the rap shit. And then like when the mosh pit popped off, I was like, I'm getting the fuck back out of here because I am not dying through this shit.
Yeah, because that's an image right there for real.
Roided up Bostonian white guys.
I saw like a lot of American Eagle back tattoos, and I was like, this is that. And that was like I'm totally derailing this podcast right now, but it was like back in the era where you would meet people from message boards, and I was like, I have no idea what these people are going to be. And I was like meeting rap message board people in New York, and I'm like, all right, this is really awkward right now. Like this podcast has been 100 times less awkward than the people I met at Rock the Bells in 2007 in New York.
That's the goal.
Sorry.
What were you
No, go ahead. You go.
I was just gonna say on the Rock the Bells tip, I was supposed to go. I was gonna cover it at one of my first jobs, and I begged my fucking editor to get me a pass because I live right near MetLife Stadium, which is where it was being hosted at the time. And we worked so hard. I wrote this article. I think I interviewed one of the people and did like an email exchange. And then like 2 days before this shit happened, they canceled it. It was the year they canceled it.
Wow.
The lineup was that was the year they got Supernatural to announce the lineup. Yeah. And he freestyled the whole thing. It was like I was dumb hype. Then I was dumb hype, and then they canceled it, and so I never got to go to Rock the Bells. That's my story.
I think maybe the last of the It's Almost Dry conversations is, and this, I don't think this is an official question, but is Kid Cudi washed, or is he just, does Kid Cudi just have the widest stretch between good Cudi and bad Cudi of any artist, or is he washed?
He's been done for a while, man. I don't know. No.
I liked Kids See Ghosts, but that was like an anomaly amongst like the Passion Prayer, Demon Slayer, whatever that was called. That had like some good production mostly, but I didn't love it. Man on Moon 3, I didn't like all that much.
Yeah, it's all right.
Garbage. It was not good. Yeah. And then that was truly like an awful song on so many levels, just because Cudi was trash. Kanye was not as bad, but still quite bad. And then the beat was done by both Ye and Pharrell. And I was like, who made this beat? This is the worst. This is like, that was the worst beat on the whole album. Like it was just nothing. There was nothing there. I was like, what the fuck is this beat?
It
There's
felt like
actually-
leftovers in the back of the fridge. Like
It's
it
just
was
like completely bland, like a beyond bland. I was like, literally, this is anybody could have made this.
The Chipmunk Soul, the fucking the vocal sample was really nice. I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Oh,
but
I
the rest
almost
is-
forgot that was even in there. Okay, that's probably Ye's contribution then. But
yeah,
yeah,
that was real nice. But yeah, nah, like like Cuddy brought nothing to that. Like you know, like Cuddy's just kind of been on like all his features just like ruin everything he's on. He ruined that song. He ruined fucking Pissy Pamper by Playboy Cardi. Like they gotta stop him, bro.
I liked him on the Metamorphosis. I think I liked him on that one. But
I mean,
yeah,
I would say-
mostly.
Yeah, I mean,
It was
I would say
alright.
that, like he's, you know, Kids See Ghosts felt like the most incomplete of the 7-song album run push. Like
Most
that-
incomplete or most complete?
the most incomplete, just in the sense that
Really, I don't
it
agree with that.
kind of I liked it, but it felt like a teaser for an album that I'm not going to get. You know, the
Mm.
length of it really bothered me. It's the songs didn't feel fully done in a way. Yeah.
And you know
That's-
what's crazy? Coincidentally, the best song on Kids See Ghost has Push on it. So
I gotta go after this, but I'm gonna end with my controversial tape. I've never enjoyed a Kid Cudi album.
that's
He's-
fine.
That's
Like
fair,
I'm
that's
not
fair.
I'm not even saying he's bad. I'm saying he falls at like his whole kind of punk, kind of emo aesthetic was like when he dropped, I was like, okay, that was actually, you opened up with saying like I used to DJ dubstep. That was around the point where I was like, all right, let me leave hip hop to the side a little bit and come back in a few years because it was no longer like that. Like it was so far, it was so different than the hip hop I was listening to, and not in a way I enjoyed. Like I was like listening to Clips albums. It's like, all right, I certainly don't sell coke. I certainly don't move weight, but I can relate to the talk and the lifestyle and the environment, and like I know what my life is. And when Kid Cudi came out, I was like, hell no, that's not for me.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
I like Man on the Moon 1 a lot. I have a lot of really positive memories associated with that project. I even like Man on the Moon 2, but after that, I was over it. Like I had a phase and I got over it very fast, you know?
Yeah, Man on the
I've-
Moon hit when I was in high school. It was like grade 9. So that's like
Right
peak,
there.
like Kid Cudi was like a sage philosopher to us fucking young teenagers. But I'd say Man on
See,
the
that
Moon
totally
1 is
makes
still
sense.
fine. It's fine. It's still pretty good. Man on the Moon 2, I actually think holds up really well. That's my favorite by far. But everything after that, I've never loved or even really liked any full-length project other than Kids See Ghosts. I thought that was actually very good. But
That's the thing. He
that's
was like an
half not
artist
even
where
him,
I
so.
saw his talent and I was like, not for me. I wish you well. Like I sometimes there's someone you're like, oh, that's whack. I can't believe you like that. With him, I was just like, this doesn't register on my musical map of stuff I'm listening to.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
have the
fine,
need.
you know.
Yeah, everyone's got stuff where it's like, oh, that doesn't hit for me, but you don't get mad at it.
Right, exactly.
So-
yeah, you know.
So I think we should follow the out of Sun
Yeah.
Ra, but let's do a conclusion. Everybody gives a conclusion, then we'll end this thing.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Who do you want it, Sun Ra? Do you want to start or should I?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to click off as soon. I'm going to wait and hear what you guys say. But yeah, I think I was surprised. I did not expect to enjoy It's Almost Dry as much as I did, just because I am, like, for lack of a better term, like this coke rap snob. Like I listened to Tana Talk 4 so many times. I listened to the last 3 Boldy James projects so many times, like Rome Street's next album and Stove God are my most anticipated projects. So I was like, okay, this is going to be like a little watered down, more commercial. And it kind of was, but at the same time, I was like, look, he did his thing. I don't think it'll make my top 10 for the year, but it'll probably sneak into my top 20 unless like there's a phenomenal rest of the year that goes on. And, good for him. I'm glad he got his number 1 because he's been putting work for a long time. I remember all the label beef with Jive, and to see him like reach that after 20 years, it feels good as, and also people mentioned Sarface earlier. I can't believe that 7L and Esoteric are still relevant. So good for them too.
Yeah, man, more relevant than ever. That's the
Yeah, I
crazy
know
part.
that is
Yeah.
crazy.
I only knew them first through Czarface. I never heard of them before that. So
Same.
yeah.
I had their
same.
Fat Beats record in 2002, and I guarantee if you took a time machine and told me that Pusha T would still be rapping in 22, I'd be like, oh yeah, no problem. And like, if you told me that Czarface had it, if you told me Czarface was a thing, I would not have believed you.
I have the for one of my older jobs, I have the deluxe CD with the comic of Every Hero Needs a Villain, like on my bookshelf right now.
That's
Like,
dope.
that's
Dude, that
sick.
was their
Yeah.
best album, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, Every Hero
That
Needs a Villain.
Jizza song,
Yeah.
that Jizza song.
Yeah.
Woo!
SonRaw, SonRaw, did you know I can rename you in the chat?
Oh shit! I did not know that.
renamed you, friend of time.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I gotta tell him that. He's gonna appreciate that shit. I'm screen capping that.
Friend
That's
of time.
hilarious.
Well, sorry, Ro, what were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say I can give my conclusion.
Yeah.
That yeah, I think this album was good. It underwhelmed slightly, mainly because of the production. I think Pusha T, it wasn't his A1 performance, but I think he still rapped quite well. I really liked that he tried new things flow wise, and I think most of them worked. Like I'm the minority here that liked Neck and Wrist. I liked what he did on that. I would say, yeah, it's just the beats were just a little stale in parts, but overall, like I have no problem really with making an album like this in this kind of middle ground of commercial and street. Just wasn't the absolute best, but I'm happy for it, and I love Push, and I'm glad he goes number 1 too. I'm overall pleased. It won't be in my top 10. Very likely won't be in my top 20 either. It just doesn't have the replay value, but still good album.
So I'll go and Dylan's the headline. We got he's coming out of the curtain doing it. So but I'll set this up and say this album kind of makes me miss the height of the mixtape era, because in the mixtape era, we would have like the different colors of this. We would have like DJ Ski's remix version. We would have, we would have a Danger Mouse version. We'd have everybody be doing different, like, you know what? This is my version with only Bill Withers samples. You know what I mean? And like,
man,
it would be hot, like, because the raw material on here is great, but the sequencing is really bad, and the verses of Pharrell versus Kanye is a terrible idea, and it's got joints, right? So anybody who's like creating their own version of this, it's probably going to be better. I believe in your version to be better, and I wish this got a really big remake. Like, I wish like I could get a Le Orange version of this album. I think that would be awesome.
You know? I gotta tell him that. That'd be crazy.
Yo, I got some breaking news right now.
Do it.
The Clips first album exclusive audio footage just dropped on streaming.
Oh yeah, I meant to say that.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw it on Reddit. That's nuts. I gotta go run it.
It's in full, I believe. I looked at it before. I didn't listen to it on the stream, but I think it's the full album. Like,
I gotta go run it out.
The same.
I'm running it. That's fire.
There's some good stuff on that.
Fire. Dylan, give me your conclusion on this.
All right. So I want to say, so I like this. I thought it was good. Like Rose said, I really do appreciate I appreciate Push trying to keep it fresh with the flows, and like he's got, he's not, this isn't like top tier Push rapping, but he's still rapping his ass off, like he's like, there was no point on this album where I'm like, oh, that was just like bad, like at its worst, it was like, okay, like that didn't need to be here, but it wasn't like, like there's no like clunkers here. I don't think, like, at least when it comes to bars, like the beats are kind of a mixed bag. I think I might be maybe in the minority who thinks that Pharrell kind of blew Kanye out the water. I think the Pharrell beats are fucking fantastic. But maybe that's just the headspace I've been in recently. I think like I've been saying a bunch, like Push is at a really interesting point in his career, and just like this trajectory that we've been talking about is so like, it puts all the music he makes in this really weird context that I feel like very few rappers of his vintage and his age bracket really are in, like he's kind of got his like production wise, rapping wise, and like notoriety wise, he's got his feet in like 3 different spots at once. And it's cool to see him get his number 1 specifically because of that, like he's kind of like a lot of what he's kind of going through right now feels unprecedented, even if it isn't 100%. Because like he's not the first rapper to be in a position like this, but it just feels different to me. But like overall, the project was cool. I don't really know that I've definitely been playing Brambleton and Let the Smoker Shine the Coops a bunch, you know, like that. And Just So You Remember, I'm mad I didn't bring that up because I love that song. But I gotta say, there's not a single song on this album that's as good as Lunch Money. That's all I gotta say.
Beautiful track.
Yo, Lunch Money is like because like that came out between My Name Is My Name and Darkest Before Dawn. And I remember when Lunch Money came out, I was like, oh, this is it. Like this is gonna blow my brain on the wall, you know, like. And then, you know, Darkest Before Dawn is still great, my personal favorite solo Push project, but like there's no song on this project that's as good as Lunch Money. And I feel like that's kind of unfair, but at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. Just like if Push and Kanye went in more of that direction with this stuff, as opposed to like Kanye's kind of trying to, I almost kind of feel like Kanye's trying to fit Push into like that vintage Rockefeller sound that he came up on. That's kind of what this feels like here. And it's fine. Like it's a fit. You know, like he's definitely like Push is living out some Jay-Z fantasies right now. He's definitely like living vicariously through that like Blueprint era type shit. And that's fine. But you know, like just like hearing that Lunch Money and just like, I don't want to say it's bad compared to that, because that's really not fair. But this was good. I liked it. It's probably not going to crack my top 10 or top 20 either, but like there's stuff on here that I'm going to keep returning to for sure. You know, it's not bad by any stretch.
Yeah, there's no Alone in Vegas, but it is what it is.
And
But yeah, this was fantastic. This was like being in a Toy Story movie, right? And I'm like the Don Rickles potato head, and it was awesome.
I had fun, guys. Like I'm down to do these regularly. I don't know when you guys wanted to do the next one, but keep me in the loop for sure.
Yeah, I'm with it for sure.
For sure,
Absolutely.
man.
This is so
a lot
much
of fun.
Thank you. And everybody, yep, smiling feels good. Try it on your face.